Well, my great-grandfather, he was one of the first Italians to come to Australia. And we're not sure why, the family left Italy at that stage, but it's been an interesting connection since, because Umberto Terracini is obviously a relation. And Umberto founded the Italian Communist Party, wrote the Constitution with Pertini. So it was a kind of complicated family history in that my relative Umberto Terracini was, connected to all that in a very serious way. When I was a kid, I went to DY Public School, and there were very few kids at that school that had a name that wasn't Anglo-Saxon. And so none of the kids or the teachers could pronounce my name, so they referred to me as kerosene tin. Or spaghetti eater was quite a common one too. Oh, you look back on it now, and some of the things that occurred in terms of racial discrimination were pretty appalling. But I think it made us certainly made us a lot more resilient, determined, and I think developed an incredible work ethic. I suppose my passion for opera came really when I was growing up in the Salvation Army. And without knowing it, it was an incredible education, because all I wanted to do was play music. So I learnt to play all the brass instruments, and I started singing. And there's a photograph that my mother has from when I was 4 years of age, when I sang my first song in public. And it was a Sunday school anniversary, and I was singing Christopher Robin is saying his prayers to a packed house. And then I sang as a boy soprano, and then when my voice broke, I started singing, and I was studying music at Sydney University, and I had to have some singing lessons. And so I went to this teacher, and she was fantastic. And she said to me one day, you should think about being an opera singer. And I didn't know anyone who'd been an opera singer. I hadn't seen an opera, but I loved that style of singing, and that's the way I'd always sung. And then coincidentally, a few weeks later, a friend of mine at university said, they're looking for people to be extras in the opera, and they're paying. And I said, oh, well, okay, fine. So we did it. So I got a job as an extra in Turandot when Opera Australia, or the Australian Opera, was playing at the Elizabethan Theatre in Newtown. So Graham Murphy and Graham obviously is one of the most famous choreographers and dancers in Australia, he and I were extras in this production of Turandot. And at the end of the night, when we'd finished, I used to go around and stand in the wings and listen to Donald Smith sing Nessun Dorma before it was, a popular, almost a pop song. And I thought, wow, that guy's fantastic. And so then that really instilled the desire in me to want to be an opera singer. I went back to my singing teacher, and I went in a few competitions. And look, frankly, there weren't many people around in those days, so I got lucky and won a lot of them. And then people started asking me to sing in operas, and I thought, wow, this is fantastic. In 1976, I was invited by Hans Werner Henze to go to Italy and to sing in a festival in Montepulciano in Toscana. And he asked me to sing Sancho Panza in a new production of Don Quixote. And it was a weird thing. When I was there, I felt at home. It was the lifestyle, it was the way we were working. Everything about it felt completely natural to me. Whereas at that time, I didn't feel that in Australia. So I thought, I've got to get back here. So the next year I went back there to study with a singing teacher, and I did that for a couple of years. Then finally I thought, I'm going to go and live there. So I had a full-time position as a young baritone at Opera Australia, or the Australian Opera as it was in those days, and I quit. And I had nothing. I had nowhere to go, didn't have a job, but I just thought, I'm going to go to Italy. And I did, and bought a little place up on Lake Como in Fagetto Lario. Beautiful place, and found this fantastic teacher in Milano, and started studying. And then I started singing, all over Europe and so on and so on. And so I had to learn the language, and I learned it very, very quickly because I wanted to, and I was living in a village where no one spoke English. And so it was a fantastic experience. And then to be immersed in that culture of the great operatic tradition was a fantastic thing. And look, quite frankly, if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't be doing this job today. I learned an enormous amount during that time. And my first job was singing with an Italian touring company, the Opera Compagnia Città di Milano. And they used to tour a lot in Germany. I sang for about 30 years, originally in Europe, but I used to come back to Australia every year to sing. And I was doing a big piece with Peter Greenaway in Amsterdam, Raso, a horse drama with an opera by Louis Andriessen. And I sort of had an epiphany. It was a huge success and I'd enjoyed it enormously. And we had massive standing ovations every night. And I remember thinking when I was taking my curtain call one night that I wanted to do something else. And when I was singing in Montepulciano, which was 20 years earlier, it was a festival that involved the whole town. So all the women in town were making the costumes and the sets, and there was the town band playing with the orchestra as well. And it was a fantastic experience. And by that time, I'd moved back to Australia with my then wife, and we were living in Lismore in New South Wales. And so various people had asked me to start a theatre company, and I thought that was a really bad idea, and I didn't want to do that. But in the end, I thought I would start a company that, yes, it had theatre, but also dance, a bit like the theatres you see in most towns in Germany, where they have actors, they have a dance company, they have an opera company, and so on. And they brought shows in. So I did. I started this company, and I called it Northern Rivers Performing Arts, NORPA. It's still running today. And it became very successful. And so I felt that I wanted to do more of that. I got a call from a bureaucrat in the Queensland government one day asking me if I'd be interested in running the Queensland Biennial Festival of Music. And I said, well, I've never heard of it, but it sounds like a good thing. And that too was about going out into communities and making community music. And so we went out into all these towns in Queensland. And just as a perspective, it's further from Brisbane to Mount Isa than it is from London to Moscow. So we were running this festival all over this state, which is massive. And we would create events. So we had things all over the state that involved everyone in those communities being in them. And I found it enormously stimulating and tremendously emotional in a lot of cases too. And the people in all those towns became incredibly emotional about the pieces they were creating. And so I enjoyed that a lot. And it was during that period that I just ran out of time, because then they asked me to run the Brisbane Festival and the River Festival. So I was running 3 festivals at one time, and I just ran out of time to be singing. And during that time, Anna Bligh, when she was the Premier, asked me to do this thing for the 150th celebrations of Queensland. So I said, well, we'll tour a shed, kind of a cross between a shearing shed and a Spiegel tent, and we'll tour it around Queensland, and we'll have, local acts, and we'll bring acts in and so on. So we were opening it in Mount Isa, in the Bull Ring, where they have the rodeo every year. We had a heavy metal band playing there from Mount Isa, and as you can imagine, they were loud. And so I was in there when they were rehearsing, and I'd been speaking to a headhunter, and this headhunter called me, and he said, we want to interview you for the job at Opera Australia as artistic director. And I couldn't hear him, and it was this huge heavy metal band screaming their heads off. And he said, where are you? And I said, well, I'm in the Bull Ring at Mount Isa. And the phone went silent. Anyway, in the end, they offered me the job. And so I came here at the end of 2009 and started as the artistic director of Opera Australia. Look, it's been a really fantastic time. It's been an exciting time. There have been difficult times, but when the board interviewed me, they said to me, well, what do you think Opera Australia needs? What would you do if you were the artistic director? And I said, well, I think the company needs to do something on the harbour. So a big event that attracts everyone, not only from all over Australia, but from all over the world. And I think the company also needs to stage the Ring, because it had been more than 50 years and the company still hadn't managed to stage a ring cycle. And any company that purports to be of international standing has to do the ring cycle. It's the sort of Olympics, the Everest of classical music. And the third thing I said was we need to do big musicals, the classical musicals, like South Pacific and so on. So they gave me the job, and then I had to do those things. And so actually it worked out. We did all the things I said I would do. It was difficult, but nevertheless we were able to do it, and the company has been very successful. Well, it was a great honour to be rung by the ambassador from Italy in Australia to tell me that the president had awarded me the Commendatore, the Star of Italy, and which of course is an incredible honour And it was quite unexpected, I have to say. But nevertheless, I'm extremely proud to receive it, and I wear it with great pride, as I'm doing today, at every opening night, and it's a source of inspiration to me too. And obviously the Order of Australia, when that was awarded to me, I was extremely proud of that, and I still am, and so I wear them both side by side, which really is about how I feel now in terms of who I am, in that a big part of me feels very Italian. But at the same time, I also feel very Australian now. Australia has changed enormously since I was a kid at DY Public School and Manly Boys High.
Buonasera, salute!